Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and I am here to do an update for week 16 of the year 2022 and tell you what I have read for my 55K page challenge. Now, one commenter mentioned last week, is this really a challenge or is this just a goal? And I don't know if it's a goal or it's a challenge. It's just something that I'm going to be doing. Now, I think I've mentioned this before on my channel that I keep a database of every book that I have read since December 1990. And starting about 10 years ago, I also started recording the number of pages that I have read in this database. So it is very easy for me to say how many pages I read in a week and track that back going 10 years. And historically, I tended to read 42,000 to 45,000 pages per year. Now that I am retired, I have upped that to 55,000 pages. So I'm just going to run with this and see where it goes. It's going to be interesting to see how much more I read per year now that I am retired. And just counting pages is a way for me to focus on what I've been doing through the week. So, what have I been reading? The first book is a book that I DNF'd, and this is Storm by George R. Martin. Not George R. Martin, George R. Stewart. And he is the author of one of my favorite science fiction novels, Earth Abides, which is the story of a post-pandemic apocalypse. But this novel was supposed to be about a storm that forms over the Pacific and goes up to the west coast of the United States. And the main character of this book is supposed to be a storm and how that storm interacts with the people. But it's just not a very interesting book. I had really high hopes for this because I loved Earth Abides so much. And I thought this was a very interesting premise, but the author just does not pull it off. And so I DNF'd it at 160 pages. Now, since I'm not doing a count of how many books I read per year, I'm going ahead and count that I did finish 160 pages of this book. The next book that I read was the Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki. And this was a BookTube prize book, so I cannot say anything about it, but it was an audiobook and it's worth 560 pages. The next book that I read is the best book of the week, and that is In the Eye of the Wild by Natashja Martin. This is 160 pages. It is translated from the French. It is a story of a naturalist who goes studying in a remote part of Russia. And this is 2014, 2015. There's no cell phone coverage out there, so she's really remote. And she has an encounter with a bear, and the bear attacks her, and she has to defend herself with an ice axe. But in this conflict with the bear, she does get mauled. The bear bites her skull, cracks it, and tears off part of her jaw. So a lot of this book is about her recovery, about the surgery she received in Russia, which when she went back to France was deemed unsatisfactory. So she had to go through multiple surgeries in France, not only to undo the botched Russian surgeries, but to try to reconstruct her face. Now, more interesting than just the story of rehabilitation and medical rehabilitation is that in this part of Russia, the original native people had this, let's just say, folklore, where that if a person was attacked by a bear and survived the attack, that person became in part a bear themselves. And this is her just sort of thinking about herself and the bear and what it means for a human to be in the wild and to meet an animal and just how unlikely those encounters are. And I don't really buy all that spiritual beliefs of becoming part bear herself, but she thinks about that, and it's the way her view of nature that is quite fascinating. So I can highly recommend this book. As I said, it's 160 pages. It's a very easy read. She has a very uncomplicated style. I don't know if that's just from the original French or just the translator, but this is a pretty good book if you like nonfiction and nature writing with a little bit of odd spirituality thrown in. The next book I finished was also an audiobook for the Booktube Prize, and that was What Strange Paradise by Omar El Akkad. I will have to leave off talking about this for now. After that, I read a book for an in-person book group here in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and that was, Pavilion of Women by Pearl S. Buck. Now, she did win the Nobel Prize for Literature, so I sort of had high hopes for this book. And it is the story of Madame Wu, who is just turned 40. But she has decided that she is done with her wifely duties to her husband, and she wants to devote the remainder of her life to herself. Now, so what she decides is that her husband needs to take a young concubine, and she is going to pick out her husband's concubine. Now, the husband is not really keen on her picking out a concubine for him. He says he's totally happy with his wife and wants to continue their relationship as normal, but she's done. She's had her children, and she wants to live her own life. Her husband's father had acquired a very large library. And when she was a young wife, her father-in-law, told her, don't read the books in this library. They are not for you. But now that she has turned 40, she wants to devote herself to reading these books. And she's trying to gather this life together, and she meets a priest, and she falls in love with this priest. It's not a physical relationship love, although she kind of maybe would be willing to do that, but it's more just of a spiritual love. And after that, the book just sort of falls apart. It took me a while to discover when this book was taking place. It took about 60 pages or so before they mentioned the Cultural Revolution in China. So it's very much of a contemporary book of when it was written, and it was written in the mid-40s. But as I said, it just sort of falls apart with what happens with her, the love interest in the priest and the concubines that she finds for her husband. It could have been very fascinating. I just find it very interesting, the dynamic between the husband and the wife, where the wife is pushing for the concubine. The husband's resilient to getting a concubine. Other women in her life are very resilient. They're trying to say, we don't want concubinage in China anymore. We're moving towards being a more modern nation, and concubinage is the old way. But Madame Wu is very insistent that her husband take a concubine. And then her relationship with that concubine. And you get more of Madame Wu's relationship with her concubines than her husband's relationship with his concubine. But ultimately, I think this is a book that fails. Again, Pearl S. Buck won the Nobel Prize in Literature, and she probably felt compelled to continue writing books. And this is one of those books where an author has an idea for a book, and they start on it. The author probably say, this is just not working, and they need to set aside the novel. And this is a novel that probably should have been set aside and not completed. That's just my opinion. I have not actually had the book group meeting with this yet, and I'm kind of interested to hear what other people think about this book, because I think I'm the only male in this book group, so it should be an interesting conversation. But my first opinions of this is just not very good. I've also wanted to start reading more short stories. Previously, when I was doing like the 100 book challenge and counting books that I read, I hesitated to take time off just to read short stories because they just took time away from reading whole books. Excuse me. But especially this month, when I've been reading for this BookTube prize, a lot of the books that I have read and been reading have connections to short stories or essays that I want to read. The Book of Form and Emptiness had a character named after a Borges short story, The Elf. And I was starting to read that short story, and my wife came in and assigned me other chores that I had to do right away. And I never picked up that short story again, but I want to. What Strange Paradise also has a strong connection to a short story by Ambrose Bierce, The Occurrence on Owl Creek Bridge. And I do want to read that right now. But the one thing I did read was an essay, also inspired from the Book of Form and Emptiness. And that is the essay Unpacking My Library by Walter Benjamin. And this is the story of Walter Benjamin, who had his personal library boxed up for more than 2 years. And it is him describing opening the boxes and revisiting all his books again. And then it talks about how it is to be a collector of books and what it means to go looking for a book that is out of print that you cannot find anywhere, or buying books at auctions. That's like someone's library is on sale, and what it is like to bid on someone's library when you may not want everything in that person's library, but you want one particular book in that library. And the essay was Unpacking My Library by Walter Benjamin. It's only 10 pages, so it doesn't add a whole lot towards my 55K page count, but it is something I want to continue to do every week, to at least read one short story or one essay, because it is an area of reading that I sort of have been neglecting for a long time. So that is the end of what I read. And what it comes out to, when you add it all up, is that I read 1,465 pages, either in audio, digital, or print. And my yearly total is now 19,661 pages. So that is the end of my update. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good day. Goodbye.